Very frustrating. Now I have the better tools, and now I'm always on time.
Oh, well, good for you. But you say you needed to have some help with it. You were willing to reach out and get some assistance?
Yes, I was.
What would you say to other people who are somewhat reluctant to do that?
It's not bad to ask for help.
Okay.
You can't really do it by yourself. You might think you can, but it's always good to have an extra set of eyes looking at it.
Okay, and your life is much better now, right? Thanks
Absolutely.
to Adrian? All right.
Absolutely.
Well, you know what? You may help other hoarders decide to get help, so I really appreciate your phone call.
Hi, Heidi.
Good to have you with
problem.
us.
Thanks.
All right, thanks. We have to take a quick break, but we're going to come back with some suggestions on what you should do if you need help or you want to help someone else get organized and get rid of some of this clutter. If you're living like this, we're going to tell you what you need to do. Stay with us.
It's like potato chips. You can't just have one.
Our topic on this edition of It's Your Call is hoarding. This is becoming more and more prominent in society today as a result of television shows like Hoarders, which is on A&E. That's what got my attention. And then I realized after doing some research that there are close to 1.5 million people in this country who have been diagnosed as hoarders. These are the people who just can't get rid of anything. If you think you're one of them or you know someone who is, we're going to give you some suggestions right now on what you can do to help them. And then a little bit later in the show, we're going to talk about those animal hoarders. You've seen that on the news each and every day, so we're going to tell you what to do about that as well. I'm going to return to Marla here for a second because we just heard from Heidi. She was reluctant at first, but got help and said now that her life is so much better. If someone's unwilling to seek help or they're fine with their environment being cluttered, what do you do?
Oftentimes that's the situation. We often have calls come in from relatives who find the situation distressing and they're worried about their loved one. Mm-hmm. And the most we can offer is an educational session to sit down and talk with them, to educate them, to be accepting of them, to let them know that help is available and that there's nothing wrong with this and that we can help.
This is not anything, Adrian, that can be solved overnight though, right? I mean, how many times do you have to talk to them and how do you walk them through relieving themselves of any of these possessions?
Well, it's a very long process in most cases, because if you think of the amount of things in a hoarder's environment, and thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and you're going one item at a time, it can be very painstaking. But usually we'll pick up. Once somebody gets familiar with the process a little bit, then I can get them moving a little faster. But also there are ways that people, like for example, one client I worked with was addicted to, she had a shopping addiction, and bought a lot of things online. She had packages delivered every day. While we were decluttering, we got permission from this one site to return the items brand new in the box, and we matched up the receipts. And I was working with her 2 or 3 times a week. And she was supposed to take these things each time to the post office to return them, and it finally dawned on me this was going too smoothly.
Oh.
She was not too upset about it. I could tell there's something odd about this.
Did she hoard them somewhere else?
She did, in her car.
In her car?
I suggested we take a little field trip to her car, and she absolutely faked a panic attack to distract me.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they were all in her
So they go
car.
to all extremes to hold on to these things, right?
Yeah, sometimes we see that. And oftentimes what we do with the people that compulsively buy or acquire items in large quantities like that, rather than as a progression over time, is we take them on what we call exposures, where we take them to the places where they're more likely to acquire, and we work through the anxiety with them, expose them to that experience, and have them not acquire the item and experience that distress, which is usually less than they think it will be.
What comes first though, the chicken or the egg? I mean, do you try to teach them about the behavior and then declutter, or do you declutter and then explain to them why it got that way in the first place?
We typically teach them a little bit about the behavior first and explore with them what exactly it is that leads to their hoarding and maintains their hoarding, and also explore what it is that the function that the hoarding serves for them, so that we can start to unravel that before we go ahead with an organizational plan and start the excavation process.
The excavation process, okay. I'm going to go back to the telephone lines now where Chris is joining us. Chris, thanks for being with us. Chris?
Yeah.
Hi, thanks for being with us. Are you a hoarder?
I'm sorry, we're breaking up here.
Oh, I was just wondering if you would consider yourself a hoarder.
I thought I did, but maybe after looking at the examples you've already had, I'm maybe a neat freak compared to some of them.
Are you someone who finds it difficult to part with items, or do you think that you'll always find a reason to use them in the future?
Well, some people call it hoarding. I prefer to think of it as a sentimental collection of life's choices and experiences.
Okay, so are you whitewashing that?
I think it's justifiable, as you just mentioned, because it's resourceful preparedness for whatever you might ever need for any reason at any time in the future.
Okay, so you're not really looking for help to get rid of your items.
I know my wife would love me to get help. I know my secretary would love me to get help.
But you don't feel that you need help. Is your collection in any way disrupting your life? I mean, I know your wife and your secretary might like you to be a little neater, but do you feel like that it's bothering you in any way?
It bothers me, certainly, because when you collect so much stuff and you're not organized as a natural tendency, then when you do look for something, it takes forever to find it.
Right, we heard that with Heidi. She said she was always late.
Yeah, I also, again, I have a hard time parting with it because I think I might need it someday, or might use it someday, or might get around to doing it someday.
Well, you're not alone there. I'm going to give you some advice on that because, Adrian, a lot of people say that. They say it's not so much that they have an emotional attachment to it, but they're practical and they just think, hey, I might need this, or someone I know might need this. So what do you say to Chris and others like him?
If I had $1 for every time I heard that, I could retire today. Usually when people say I might need it someday and they put it aside, they'll put something over here and they put something over there when the piles grow and things spread. And chances are if you hold on to things too long, then they just are permanent placement. They don't really ever leave. So you really have to...
I'm sorry, but can you put a time limit on something? Like if Chris hasn't used a particular item in a year, can we say, all right, it's time to give it away or toss it?
Well, you can. I think you can create some boundaries or rules to live by, as I call it too. And see, for certain items, it could be like there's one rule that if you haven't worn something in a year, then it goes.
I was just going to use that example because every woman who's watching saying, okay, after 2 years, if I can't get into it and my diet hasn't worked, I'm tossing it.
And that's
so a time limit.
Right, because with clothing in particular, people hang on to things and they're all different sizes. There could be 4 different size ranges and they won't get rid of the things that no longer fit. And I try to encourage them to do that because if they lose the weight, they should treat themselves to something new.
Okay, Chris, there's some suggestions for you. Thanks very much for your call. We appreciate it. Now, we've been talking a lot about the collection of things and possessions, but there's another kind of hoarding that we hear about as well, and I'm sure that you've seen it in the news, where people keep dozens of dogs or cats or other kind of animals. We want to know how prevalent animal hoarding is, and to tell us about that, Ann Irwin is joining us. She's the Executive Director of the Bucks County, Pennsylvania SPCA and the President of the Federated Humane Societies of Pennsylvania, and I bet you've seen your share of animal hoarding, haven't you?
More than my share. I've worked at the Bucks County SPCA for nearly 39 years, and we've seen these cases all that time, and I think we're seeing more of them. That may mean there are more, or it may mean we're hearing about them more.
Okay, well, we're going to talk more about that. I just wanted to get people's attention on it because the idea of living with the filth and the garbage is really repulsive to me. But when I see all of those animals in the cages and the feces and the urine stains and everything, I don't know if I'm a neat freak, but it really freaks me out. We're going to find out what to do about it if you know someone who's suffering from animal hoarding. Stay with us.